Hello, my name's Catherine Lord, and I'm co-founder of Out-of-the-Box Training. I hope to offer you a flavour of what Out-of-the-Box is and the impact it's having on the well-being and education of children in UK schools. You'll both experience Out-of-the-Box for yourself and hear from people who are using it in schools. Out-of-the-Box is new. It began in early 2021, but its background is in the well-established Godly Play created by Jerome Berriman. Godly Play is an imaginative approach to Christian education and spiritual nurture. Out of the Box also comes from Deep Talk, created by Tula Varkonen. Deep Talk was itself inspired by Godly Play and used for contexts which are not religious, such as workplaces and schools. My background is in teaching and working with children. Discovering Godly Play turned everything upside down, both for me and for my relationships with children. I viewed my role no longer as filling children up and telling them what to think, but as providing the environment in which they could discover things for themselves, to be with them and to learn alongside them. As a trainer for Godly Play UK for 12 years, I both trained and supported storytellers to use Godly Play in different contexts, such as churches and schools. And discovering Deep Talk gave me new and significant approaches that complemented Deep Godly Play, but which were more appropriate for non-religious contexts. Working with other Godly Play and Deep Talk trainers and storytellers across the world has enabled Out of the Box to develop quickly, and it is now used in contexts including schools, care homes, community groups, therapeutic settings, as well as churches. I'd like to start by showing you a few slides to introduce the paper that's been written on the use of Out of the Box in schools, and also to show you some photos of Out of the Box being used in schools so that you get a flavour of what the paper is talking about. So Out of the Box is a not-for-profit organisation that supports the movement of story and play for personal and community well-being. So Out of the Box is used with children aged 4 up to 18. The top picture there is actually taken in South Korea. It's being used in schools in other places in the world as well. It's used with whole classes, sometimes with several classes, and also with small groups and sometimes one-to-one. It's being used in special schools as well and in one-to-one therapeutic sessions. The stories are shared on cloth and on sand and on anything. Particularly helpful for forest school would be to go outside and share the stories on the earth with loose found objects like sticks and stones and leaves, but we also do provide a box full of the storytelling materials, and all the stories come out of the same box, so they can all be shared with the same materials. After the story, there's chance for the children to play with the storytelling materials. They make new endings to the stories, co-create stories together, include experiences of their lives. They can work individually and as a team. And then when there's time, there's a chance to respond to the stories in different ways. So you can see on the left there that the children have taken Godly Play materials, the Holy Family, and mixed it in with the story of Christmas that was shown in an out-of-the-box way. And then on the right, they were given a chance to respond to the story by drawing if they wanted to, and those are some of the pictures there as well. But the best way to understand Out of the Box is to experience it for yourselves. So there's a recording of a story now which I invite you to get ready for, so that you can enter into this story and wonder about it for yourself. Are you ready for a story? Now we have time and space to breathe. Let's turn this upside down. Your story, my story, our story. Let's be curious about this story. There was once a person who had an idea. It felt good, but it didn't fit in. So the person walked away from it. But it followed them. Other people thought the idea was silly. So the person hid the idea away. But this made them feel sad. And anyway, the idea wouldn't stay inside. So the person decided to take the idea somewhere safe. Somewhere where they could be with the animals. Listen to the birds. And lie on the grass and gaze up at the stars. The idea needed lots of attention. The more the person loved the idea, the bigger it grew. Other people loved the idea too. And they brought their ideas. Together they were all played with. The ideas help them to see things differently. Then one day, the ideas took flight and were free to fly. Let's be curious about how we feel. I wonder what you like about this story. I wonder what you don't like. And I wonder what this story reminds you of. So you could pause the workshop here and think about those questions. What did you like? What didn't you like? And what does this story remind you of? I recorded this story with a group of adults recently, and this is a clip from some of their wanderings when they were wondering about what the story reminded them of.
I'm struck there then, Trish, is that we probably all are, you know, people who have ideas at times, but I wonder whether there is a good reason to put it in a box and to keep it safe for a while. And actually, you know, yes, it will eventually climb its way out again, but maybe some ideas do need to be paused upon, you know, not because someone's teased you or you called it silly, but because maybe it's just like a place where it needs to just sit and rest a while and become a better idea.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we could have some boxes that are made not to hide them away because they're silly or you'll feel ashamed or whatever, but just because let's park this for a while, this idea. And it's still there and we're not forgotten about it, and maybe it'll come out when the time is right or when we're right or when other people are around us.
Yeah, because it becomes a safe place for the idea not to be pulled apart, but for it to be protected and to be able to develop.
Yeah.
So maybe does that box, I can't see it that well at the moment, but does it need to be like an open box so it's not?
Oh, this one. So we could make it more like a box which is keeping it safe, but not necessarily with a lid on.
Not hidden,
yeah. So an idea could go into there to keep it safe and contained, but ready for when it's ready or when you're ready or the time is right.
And to build on it as well, because some of the ideas start with a thought or an idea, but then there's different things that have fed into that idea over time, and you learn more in yourself, and you get, you do research and things, or and then you also meet people who are thinking, oh yeah, they'd be interested in this kind of plan, so it's also finding those like-minded people, so it's building on that idea over time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as the box has an open lid now, anybody could come in and add to that idea. So it might just be a little speck of an idea to start with, and through conversations with other people, you might just keep adding things into the box until it's ready to escape.
Oh, right. Like something that's being fed, and then and it can come
fed
out.
and nurtured, and I've now got wings to fly. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I wonder whether we could almost sort of have a box that's a bit bigger then, that's sort of a safe place, but then it's not open to everybody, to the public, but we can have a bit more permission to play within this box. Maybe I'll put the bird there.
It needs to be a magic box which has elastic kind of sides.
Yes.
It grows with the idea.
Yeah. That keeps it safe.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Maybe the idea is a bit like a sort of yeast mixture, you keep adding to it, it'll just eventually expand and expand, or the porridge pot that just overflows, you can't contain it. And also I like the idea of it not having a lid, because it's like open to the stars and open to that creation, which was also inspirational, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, lots of fresh air coming in, and nature and everything. Yeah, and this expandable, safe and brave space. Well,
I wonder whether there's anything else that the person might have done or needed to do, as well as lying, looking at the stars, listening to the birds, and being with the animals. I don't know, maybe being amongst some friends, thinking about researchers who spend their whole career building on ideas, and how important collaboration with friends and colleagues is.
Would they be these people who've brought their own ideas, or would they be different people that you need?
Oh, it could be both, and yeah.
Let's bring another person here just to maybe show other people and what they need to, everyone was bringing different things that they did. And you were mentioning about building on the work of other people. So maybe these people could be back in time, not even in the present.
Yes,
people
that's an idea.
Before.
Gosh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that needs to be said at this moment before we go on to the next part of this play?
One other thing you definitely need for the development of the idea is tea and cake.
Or are some of you about to have gin and tonic? Yes, tea and cake. Lovely. Well, if I just I'll bring in the bucket. Well, that could be the champagne bucket maybe, and some things to have our tea and cake in. We've got is that okay, just to show that we've got something here to eat and drink in there as well? Yeah, we definitely need sustenance, and gathering together around tea and cake. Amazing ideas come out then, don't they? Yeah, thanks Kathy. Is there anything else that needs to be said? After the story is wandered about, we sometimes do something called community play. In this play, the metaphors of the story are worked with. In this particular instance, I asked the adults to create a landscape of what a place would look like if ideas could flow and flourish. So the first thing they asked me to do was to put down cake. So you'll see in the middle of the landscape they've created a Victoria sponge made of yellow and red felt pieces. They wanted tea, different types of tea, and comfy places to sit. They also wanted to have birdsong and music, a sea of infinity and a big sky and greenery. So this landscape was created with all the different loose parts from the box, and here's a clip of some of their wandering as they continue to wander. Where should we put this? Should we keep it like, we've got 3 ideas, 3 feathery yarns. What would you like to do with those?
Maybe an idea on the cake.
Oh,
The cake of ideas.
yeah.
I think it would be good if some of them were spread out like they were when they were playing with them, rather than in a bundle.
So I'll spread it out.
Yeah, kind of joining up some of the themes that we've got going on, sort of thing.
Oh, so joining maybe the light and the birds and the music and the water and the tea, the workman's tea, and joining up the different sorts of tea that people like, and the cake. And
I'm beginning to think this might be a strange kitchen. Maybe all the best ideas are around the table in the kitchen with plenty to eat, but with good views out the windows.
Yeah. Wow. Yes.
And comfy places to sit, obviously.
Yeah.
And music in the background.
Yeah.
I've just had a very random idea. It's going to be totally out there, but I've actually, when you first said about an area to sit or be, the first thing that came to my head is a trampoline, because I was thinking of bouncing each other ideas off each other. So maybe we could have a little trampoline outside.
A trampoline. Yay. Wow.
It was more symbolic of bouncing ideas off each other. But then I was thinking, when you talk about the playing with the children, I was thinking, oh, that would be fun, you know, after all this eating cake, and go bounce around a bit and get some exercise.
Oh yes, the exercise. Yes, the bouncing around, and yet let's.
Might be best if they bounce before they have cake.
So let's make a sort of a trampoline over here, which symbolizes all the physical activity that we need as well for our ideas, and then we can bounce up and down. Is that all right? This is our ideas. Quite nice, because this is the box now, is places we can bounce up and down in. Yeah. Oh. And sometimes in out-of-the-box sessions, the children or adults want to put themselves in the story using the little wooden figures. So here's a clip of some of that wandering that happened where people put themselves into the landscape.
I think at some point we'd all need to come together, wouldn't we? We're all doing various things, but if we're sharing ideas, then at some point in the story, we would need to come together.
And share that cake.
Yeah. And we could gather around in the middle where the tea and the cake are, maybe.
Would people be happy for me to do that now and to gather everybody around the tea and the cake?
Sounds like a good ending to this story.
Yes. Okay, lovely. Great. So you've had enough time on the trampoline. Come in for some cake. And enough time floating in the sea, on the river, and being by the water's edge, by the river. And I'm coming, definitely would love to join you for some tea and cake, or what other drink we might have. It must be nearly 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. Time for something to eat and drink. Lovely.
I think this
Thank
video
you.
ought to be shown in businesses and things, you know, where they're looking at how to promote their employees' ideas. It would be quite useful, wouldn't it?
Yes, maybe so. And I'm wondering what we might notice about the sort of place we want to be, and the sort of places that we want children to inhabit and to have as places where their ideas can grow and they can be creative and have creative kindness together.
Reminds me a bit of those sort of off timetable days that schools used to do more of. I don't know. I haven't seemed to have heard of that recently. Or a team away day. It's got all the best elements of a bit of a team development kind of meeting.
Yes.
our school had an outdoor learning day yesterday, and it poured rain all day, but they all had a whale of a time. They were at school, but we've got quite a big field and a little bit of a forest school and everything. And they had a whale of a time, and they've had a really good day today as a result, I think.
That's interesting. So you mentioned forest school, so being outside. Yeah, and then you were making those sandwiches with the children as well. So there was the sort of the eating together. Yeah. So let's just take a moment to have a look and to notice what we noticed before I put it away. So for everything that has been said and for everything that hasn't been said, thank you. I'd now like to share with you some clips of recordings of interviews with people using Out-of-the-Box in schools. We've interviewed teachers and teaching assistants, volunteers, people working for charities going into schools, and governors. So I'd like to show you first an interview with Jenny Fitch, who does a lot of work using Out-of-the-Box in schools. And she's talking here about the response of the children to the idea story, the one that we've just shared together, Out-of-the-Box in schools. So
I'm sure others will catch up very soon.
We've just had to just take a few of your experiences, and you've got some photos that you sent me, so I'm just going to share these now.
So this was a group of 10-year-olds, and I told the story of the idea, and afterwards in the community play part of Out-of-the-Box, the children changed the landscape to have a safe space to keep the idea. So the idea couldn't be taken away or broken or changed, but it would have a place where it could go and grow with a person looking after it, which I thought was an interesting idea.
Oh, sorry, I went on too quickly there. Sorry. So is that the person in the box there that we can see?
That's the person lying down in the box, yes. And they put green leaves around it because they wanted it to be a place that was nurturing and growing. And there was just one person, if you notice, one person is just with animals and birds. And another person joined her, but the figure represented what she would want to do with the idea. And she didn't want it to be in a box. She wanted it to be out in the open with all of nature. So she went and did her own thing in another part. Yeah.
Great. So they didn't all have to agree together, that they could have different ideas all in the same picture.
Yeah, they had different ideas, but they all talked together and they all negotiated together. And what was fascinating in one part was they all started talking about the values they held as a class and as a school, and wove the values in, which was interesting as well, that they started to join up lots of aspects of school life. And it was springboarding across the whole of their school day as a story. Yeah.
Great. Shall I show the next one to do with the idea story as well?
Yes, this was the next part of their story. They completely changed the landscape, and in their community play, turned the landscape into a classroom. And they just sat their important exams there. In Britain, we call them SATs in year 6, where they have to sit behind one desk on their own. And they all together joined in with imagining what would happen if their ideas took flight during that test, and knocked the teacher over. As you can see, she's fallen backwards, and the whiteboard that they created with the blocks and the white square has completely fallen over. And I think that probably was their sort of expression and processing their experience of doing testing that week in a very fun way. The teacher found it very amusing when she saw it.
I love the subversiveness of Out-of-the-Box.
It was great. That was a really good moment.
That's
Yeah.
lovely. We're now going to hear a little more from Jenny Fitch as she describes how the non-verbal language of Out of the Box has helped refugees from Afghanistan to tell their story and to process their thoughts. And also about how a child who was having social difficulties discovered for herself how she could be a different way, and how the donkey story helped transform things for her.
Sometimes it's small groups of children, and I've been working in particular with refugee children, to begin with the Afghan refugees that came in and were being integrated into our schools. And we had some very moving community playtimes, which I haven't got pictures for because to hold it was quite fragile at times. There's a lot of emotion for all of us in the room as some of these Afghan refugees told their stories. One story, I can't remember which one it was that I told, it gave them the freedom to create a house that they would like to live in, but also to build aeroplanes out of other objects in the classroom, Lego and building blocks, to show how they came out of the airports in Afghanistan and how the planes rescued them. And what it did was it gave the other children in that small group from their classes the opportunity to really empathise with them, to understand their story, and for it to be a very safe and brave space where they could share together. And afterwards, the class teacher was saying how much that had integrated all the relationships within that classroom. There wasn't Afghans versus the other children. They were all children together that were supporting and helping each other, which was just lovely. So that was one story. There was another time where one child who's beginning to show signs of real trauma from coming out of Afghanistan, and it was a starfish story again, but he didn't want to work in a team, and he didn't want to save the starfish, and he didn't want other people working there, so he became a soldier and his figure was a soldier, and he built a tower to stand on, and then he ordered other people to kill the starfish and to kill other people on the landscape. And we held that and we worked on it and we recovered it, but it also gave the classroom teacher the insight to be able to go and the evidence for him to go and get additional help, so his well-being could be supported within school. So that was a real threshold moment for him, I think, and for the classroom as a whole.
And how did the class respond to that?
The children listened, and then once he left, because we needed to remove him to another part of the classroom with the teaching assistant, we then talked about his experience leaving Afghanistan, and they wondered what that would be like. So I didn't direct, they just wondered, and then they rebuilt the story. They said, well, actually, it would be much better if we all came back and we carried on saving starfish. So they sort of restored and healed what had happened in a very helpful way. Yeah.
So when we say, you know, your story, my story, our story, let's be curious about this story, that the children are bringing their own stories into this. I'm hearing this time and time again today and with other people talking, and if children can tell their stories to each other, then the empathy and compassion and
the relational trust, I call it, relational trust in the classroom can be built, which is so important, I think.
Thank you.
There was one other little girl I could tell you about, and she comes from she's British, she comes from a very difficult home background, and she'd been all the way through school and never quite fitted in, and was always the person in trouble, always a person staying in at playtime, always a person whose parents had to come in. And I told the story of the donkey, and the donkey that bit and kicked, and you know, there is another way round. as I think the words. And at the end of that, and the end of the community play, she just came to me afterwards and she said, "I've got it." And I thought, oh, I said, "I wonder what you've got." And she said, "I'm the donkey. I'm the donkey, and I could do it differently. And then school would be fine and everybody would be happy." And I just left it at that. And then the following week, the teaching assistant came to me and she goes, "What did you do in that session?" So I told her and she said, "This particular child has not been in trouble for a whole week. And that's the first time ever." And something shifted in her that's helped her well-being, her education, her socialization, everything. And I was back in that school a few weeks ago and it has continued. And she's going on into secondary school in a much better place than she would have done. Now, I'm sure other people have put other input in, but that was the moment where her story and that story came together in a helpful way for her. Yeah.
It's interesting, and she maybe needed to discover it for herself
Yes.
as well.
She owned it for herself and she could see herself as the difficult donkey, she called it. Yeah.
Oh, what stories of hope and transformation they are.
Absolutely, and it's a real privilege to share them with children. Build the communities.
And finally, we're going to hear from Jennifer Bailey, who is a assistant head and uses Out of the Box with her class. And you'll hear how Out of the Box fits in with the restorative practices of her school and how the children just love using Out of the Box. So I'm just wanting to interview Jen because she's using Out of the Box in her school. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Jen?
Hi, I'm Jen Bailey. I'm from Little Gonaby Infant School in Grantham, and I'm assistant head as well as a Key Stage 1 teacher. And I've been using Out of the Box for quite a while now in my classroom, and have seen some really great benefits to children's well-being, as well as their ability to communicate and to share their feelings with others. And it's also linked beautifully with our new relationships policy, because as a school we made that decision to remove sanctions and move away from sort of the punitive approach and have a more restorative conversation with children. And so the questioning that we get through the Out of the Box stories have really supported that.
Great. So it supported your whole school practice and changed to how you are with children in terms of restorative practice. Fantastic. Could you give us a few examples? You're using it yourself in the classroom. Could you give us maybe a few examples of how you're seeing impact on well-being or how it's helping with the restorative practice?
Yeah, I keep the box in my classroom cupboard, and if I move the box or I pick the box up, my class actually cheer now. They absolutely love the stories. They do have their favourites, like the stick that got stuck, which is always one that's requested. But we tend to use it as a calm reflection time. So just to give children a chance to breathe and reflect in a busy day, because the school timetable, as other teachers will know, is jam-packed. So we just put aside half an hour to spend some time just having a story and spending some time together, which again aids that restorative side of our relationships, because it's building relationships and it's allowing children to communicate effectively with each other. And it's also given children a safe space to share and reflect on their feelings. Since COVID, we've noticed a number of children are really struggling emotionally. And so I've been using the stories either as a large group or, where necessary, I've had a smaller group of children. And sometimes even a one-to-one story has worked really well, just to bring out some of those feelings and emotions and difficulties the children might be having. I've also noticed that my quieter, more reluctant children are starting to join in a lot more. And I think it did take time. So when I first introduced it, getting them to contribute and share their feelings, they were a little bit shy, a little bit reluctant. But now I have hands going up everywhere and people wanting to comment and contribute. And other adults in my room are amazed at some of the responses we get, because they're only 5, 6 and 7 in my class, and the responses they give are so mature and deep. It's just brilliant. I've also found creating that circle and sitting in a circle is a lot less intrusive to have a conversation. And again, that's taken time to build that trust, that it's a safe space, but we use circles of trust a lot in school. Every class uses it. So when we sit down and read a story, the children are quite used to having that circle to share. I love how it gets children to actively listen and wonder. I'm religion and worldviews coordinator in school as well. So I'm very big on allowing children to disagree agreeably and to be able to hold a reasoned debate. And that's what I love about Out of the Box, is that when we sit and have a story, you might not agree with another person, but you're learning how to respond to that appropriately. And that will across our curriculum and how we run in school. And as time has progressed and we've repeated stories, children are now taking their wonderings a little bit deeper. So they're a lot more confident to add their own ideas to the story and say, well, instead of an elephant, what if they threw a giraffe? Or, you know, things like that. Or in the donkey story, well, maybe we could just build a separate path for the donkey to go around. And they're thinking a lot more about how to adapt the stories to help the characters in the story. Some children have gone home and have loved it so much they've had to go at writing their own scripts. So still a work in progress, so I can't share them yet. But I mean, they're 5 years old and they're going home wanting to write their own stories. They love the box so much that I had to create a little mini version. So in my classroom, I have a little hygge area where it's got blankets and cushions and a little teepee tent. And the children have their little story box. And I see them copying exactly what I do, rolling it out carefully and turning the box upside down and taking time to share stories that they've made up with each other. And I also like that for children who are struggling emotionally to communicate what's going on, it's a very non-invasive, non-intrusive way of being able to express their feelings. At the end of a story the other day, I invited the children to just create a picture with me about their week using the resources inside the box. And one little boy said, "It's been an up and down week, Mrs. Bailey." He said, "I know that I've had struggles this week and some bits haven't gone very well at all." So he said, "I think I need a black cloud." He said, "But actually it's got better. As we've chatted and I've sorted it out, it's got a bit better. So I want a sunshine as well." But it was great how he was able to articulate that. And then by the end, we'd created this beautiful class picture of all their successes, but equally things that they know they wanted to work on, which just sings restorative practice for us and really helps, you know, how we teach in school.
Yeah. Wow, thank you. I'm wondering if I could, I'm going to pause this a minute and see if I can share that picture, because he did send a picture of it. So you took a photo of the class picture, so I'll just share screen now so that maybe you could just talk a little bit about that. Here we go.
Yeah, this was following a story. So I told a story first, and then before putting away the material at the bottom, I asked them just to talk about their week. How do you think it's been? And when I mentioned the little boy who said, "I've had an up and down week," that's the picture of him on the right hand side there in the hot tub. So he'd been to his hot tub, but he knew he'd had an up and down week. So there's his sun and his cloud. And just below that, we had a little boy who had been celebrating Eid. So he asked for a plate because he'd had a celebration with food. And then the other children suggested the golden thread to go around him because it was a special time, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. And then we had lots of other, so we got the big smiley face because one little boy said, I've just had a good week. So there's an ice cream at the top. Somebody had a sleepover. So where the stars are at the very top of the picture, and then the other children said, well, surely you need some sheep, because if she had a sleepover, she'd have been counting sheep. So we had a really lovely conversation. Just in the centre, next to the cross, we had the heart, where a little boy said, I've just had time with my family. I've just enjoyed spending some family time. Then we had a goalpost, where the little boy was just really proud because he'd been practicing his corners in football and he'd mastered it. So he wanted to celebrate that. So it was just a really lovely time to celebrate what's gone well for them and a chance just to chat. If it hasn't gone well, that's okay. But what could we do to help, and how could we support each other?
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you. And that, yeah, all about sharing life together, not just siloing things off into school or education, but they come with the whole of their lives, the whole of their feelings. Absolutely. Everything's there, everything's accepted, just a way to be together.
I think a massive point would be relationships and building those relationships. And children need to see you as a human, not just a teacher. So, you know, I'll share about my life as well, and my children and my husband, and we'll talk about if I've had a tricky week, I'll say. A really tricky day yesterday. I was feeling a bit sad, but this is what I did. So they can see and they can learn, and you're that role model to them and how to access their feelings. And again, that's how the stories really support that.
So if you want to hear more interviews, then we've got lots on our website, outoftheboxtraining.org. And if you look at users, then you'll also see lots more information about Out of the Box in schools. So I do really hope that if you're interested in this approach and would like to be involved in discussion with us, then please use the discussion board, and I hope to hear from you. Thank you.